Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you had a great week and you got some good practice building data visualization with Dash Plotly in Python. So in this tutorial, I'm going to teach you all about the client-side callbacks. Client-side callbacks is part of this chapter of the Dash callbacks. I already made a few tutorials on the other sections, but today we're going to focus on the client-side callback. The client-side callback is used for three main reasons. The first reason is when you need data to be transferred very quickly to your dashboard. So if your dashboard app updates your graph or your data table every 25 milliseconds or like 50 times per second, then a regular callback would not work and you would need to use a client-side callback. If you need to connect to certain web or window APIs that don't exist as Dash components, for example, this API here, like the print API that will open a print window or a new window, whatever, these APIs, if they don't exist as Dash components, you would need to use client-side callbacks to activate them. We'll see an example in a few minutes. And then number three, when an app requires multiple round trips between the browser and Dash. So for example, if you have like 10 different graphs and plots on your dashboard and you have 5 callbacks for each graph, so there's a lot of data that's going back and forth between Dash, the app, and the server, right? You have drop downs and checkboxes and radio items and date picker. When there's a lot of information going back and forth, your app becomes a little bit slower on a regular callback. So with the client-side callback, this will be a lot faster under these conditions. So like always, you'll see here on the left side the layout of the video. If you want to jump to a certain section of the video, feel free to go under the video and click on the section you want to see. First, we're going to start with this. It will be a lot easier for you to follow along if you go into my GitHub. I made this code free for you to use. If you're using Jupyter, download this, and if you're using a Python IDE like PyCharm or Atom, download all of these. Okay? All right, so let's get started. So the first callback, or the first reason we are using a client-side callback. When you need data to be transferred very, very fast. Let me give you some context. Let me explain a little bit how Dash works and how regular callbacks work, and then it will be a lot easier for you to understand how the client-side callback makes things a lot faster. So, first, when you need data to, Dash applications are web servers running Flask and communicating JSON packets over HTTP requests. In other words, when you make a request through a callback, send some drop-down information, filter the data, and then plot the graph, you're sending that request to the server, let's say Heroku server or AWS. You're executing the code on the server, and then it's sending everything back to you. So this process is a little bit time-consuming, and this is what regular callbacks do. They execute the Python Dash script on the server side, so they execute it here. Let's see an example. Here's an example. We're use the client-side interval.py, so we're going to use this one, client-side interval, and then we're going to play this. Let's run this, and you'll see here, we're going to just use this part right here. This is what we're running. We're going to take the n intervals, so it's going to be every 2 seconds. We're going to take the n intervals, and we're going to update or slice the data frame according to the interval. So this will take the first row, and then the second row, and then the third row of this data right here. First row, second row, third row, every 2 seconds, and it's going to spit out the data into the children of the div right here. It's going to put the data right here. So let's see how that works. 1 second. Right there. Okay, so now you see that every 2 seconds it's updating a new row from the sales per customer, right? Every 2 seconds it's updating a new row because this is what we're doing here. right? So it's actually, this is a server-side callback. This is a regular callback. It's every 2 seconds, it's taking the interval, and it's saying slice the data. This data, the df, is on the server side. This data is right here on the server side. Right here is a df, because a df right here is global data frame that is saved on the server. Anytime you have a data frame that you put into your app before the layout, outside of the layout, it's saved on the server. So you're accessing the server, you're slicing the data frame on the server, you're executing this script on the server, and then you're returning the data onto the web page like here. Right? So everything is going, this callback is going, executing the code here and returning the data right here onto the computer, on the dashboard, on the app. Now, the problem with this is that it's fast. It's fast, but it's not, you cannot do this in like 25 milliseconds. I can do this every 2 seconds, 2,000 milliseconds. I can do it maybe every 1,000 seconds, but I cannot do it every 25 milliseconds. It's just too fast. And how do you know that? How do we know that it's too fast? Because if we run it, you'll see you can click on the, right down here below, click on the callback, and you'll see the speed. This runs every like 21 milliseconds, 19, 16. But this is because you do it on Jupyter and you do it on your browser. If you do it like on Heroku or AWS, this will probably take about 50 milliseconds or 70 milliseconds. So you can't do an interval that's faster than this, right? That is why we use the client-side callback like this. So if I hashtag this out, and then I open this, and then I run it, you'll see that this interval we're doing every 25 milliseconds. And you can probably do it every 10 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds. And now you see that when it runs, 1 second, oops, let me put this here. Now you see that when it runs, 1 second, make sure to hashtag this out. Let's run it. And now you see this is going every 25 milliseconds. So this is running like 40 times a second. It's updating every row every 25 seconds. It's showing up here. So this is only possible through a client-side callback like this. So let's see how you build a client-side callback. Client-side callback executes the JavaScript on the client's computer. So what we're doing here is we're taking the JavaScript script code, and we're executing this on the client side, on the browser. So it's sending information here, it's asking it to like filter data frame and do something, but the script is it's coming back, and the script is executed here. That's why it's a lot faster, because it's on the user of your app, on their computer. One very important thing to note. A very, very important thing to note. Client-side callbacks do not work with global data that is on the server, right? This data on the server, you cannot pull this directly into the JavaScript code. You have to store the data on the client side. So you have to use DCC store. And that's what we're doing right here. Right here, we're using DCC store. We're saying, take the interval, this is the quicker interval, take every, no, this is a 200 seconds, right? The service over here. Every 2 seconds, activate this callback function, and just take from 0 to 100 rows or 0 to 200 rows every 2 seconds, and then store this data as a dictionary on the browser side right here. Store it right here on the browser side, which is actually right here, right on the DCC store. Any data that you store in DCC store is on the browser side. So now that the data is stored on the browser side of the client, now I can take this data and I can activate it every 20, I'm taking this interval, every 25 seconds, 25 milliseconds, activate this client-side callback, and and then run this function, this JavaScript, which means every 25 milliseconds, take the data and return the first row, the second row value of sales per customer, the third row, the fourth row, right? So this is every 2 seconds, giving me about 100 rows of information, and this every 25 milliseconds, I'm spitting out onto the div. I'm throwing out one row, and then the second row, and then the third row. So very important to know. Very, very important to know. You cannot use global data. You have to store the data on the browser, right, on the client side, using DCC store right here, and only then you can take that data and use it inside a client-side callback. Now, how is a client-side callback built? As you can see, this is the same as Dash, just output, input, and state, or output, input, and input, whatever you want. You write app.callback, and then this part is a JavaScript code. I don't know JavaScript very well, but there's some examples on the forum, on Plotly forum, and I took this from one of the examples. So here I'm just saying you have to say function, and you have to take these two, because remember, just like in regular callback, you have one input and a state. These component properties you have to put in here. This one and this one. So if there is 2 here, there has to be 2 here. And then I'm just saying return, and this, remember, just like a regular callback, this is returning into the children of the output, right? Or whatever component property this is. This could be some other component property, but it's returning into the output here. So here I'm returning the data. This is JavaScript. The first row of this value, the second row of this value, and so on and so on. This one, and then this one, and then this one. Okay? Great. So now let's go into the second reason we can use client-side callback. It's to connect to certain web or window APIs that do not exist as Dash components. So for example, this is important. Dash components are Python classes that encode properties and values of specific React components. So it will, like the dropdown or the checklist, is a React component that was built into as a Dash component as Python, right? So if you can go right here, you'll see all different kinds of components, and here the DCC radio item and store and slider. These are React components, but in Python. But some components don't exist, and if I'd like to access certain window or APIs, they're accessible through JavaScript code using client-side callbacks. So let's look at an example. If you click on this link, you will see this open up, and here you'll see all different types of window APIs, and we're going to use the window print API, which is just, this is the syntax, very very simple. This is the code. So let's run it. Let's go into JavaScript. Jupyter, and let's close this client-side interval, and we'll open the client-side win.api, and we're going to run this right now. So see here, when I run this, this is the function that I'm running right here, the client-side callback. Here I'm actually creating graphs, pie chart, histogram, and another pie chart, and I'm saying if the user clicks on the button, it will open the print window, right? So how do I do this? This is through this code right here. You see? Here I just created 3 different graphs, pie chart, histogram, pie chart. And then at the bottom I say input and output, regular Dash, right? I'm going to take the end clicks of the printing button right here, end clicks of the printing button, and whenever and then I build a function here. I say function, and I have 1 input, so I need to put 1 argument here. And then I say if the clicks is bigger than 0, 1 click, 2 clicks, then activate this function, window.print parentheses, right? So this is JavaScript, and because of this function, whenever I click on this, it will open a print window. Right? I'm just returning an empty string here, because in Dash you have to have an output. So I'm just returning an empty string into the children of this div. So this doesn't mean anything. It's a hidden content. I'm not using anything. I'm just putting an empty string because Dash always needs an output. But this is not important. This is the most important part. All right, let's see another example. Well, I'll let you do this example at home. You can close this right here, hashtag it out, and then hashtag this back in. And this client-side callback is the same. It's using the button. It's just returning an empty string. But I have this JavaScript function, which is actually opening a window. And this comes from here. Window open right here. And you'll see the some syntax information on there and some information from here. So I took this from here and from my friend Anne. She also gave me an example, so I took it from her as well. So this is how you would open a new window with the click of a button. All right. So the third reason we would use a callback is when you require a lot of round trips back and forth between the Dash and the server, the app and the server. So for example, when your server-side callback has many components that are updating your app, like drop down and checklist and 10 graphs, then there are more requests going through the server, which will slow your app down. So I have like 10 components going here, all the way to the server, activate, like run this Python script of a regular callback, run it like 10 different drop downs, 10 different checklists, and then throw it back. It takes time. So for it to be faster, you can use client-side callbacks, which will run the JavaScript on the client, your app user's browser, right here. It will run the script right here instead of on the server. So let's see an example. Again, the example usually works best. Let's close this right here, like that. Shut down. Jupyter client-side callback. Let's use this one. All right. Let's run this callback and see right here what we're doing. In this callback, we are, let's move this to the side. Okay, in this callback, we have a histogram. In the histogram, we have a drop down. Let's actually turn on the callback. We have a drop down that changes, updates the graphs, and then we have a title you'll see up here that will change. This is the title I want. So this takes 99 milliseconds. It might be faster as I activate this, as I do more things here, there, blah, blah, blah. It takes about 80, maybe it'll take about 70 milliseconds, but it takes some time, about anywhere from 70 to 100 milliseconds, right? Because, why is that? Because through this server-side callback, a regular callback, I'm taking the drop-down value right here, the shipping drop-down value, and I'm taking the text in the input field, and I'm updating the graph with both of those components through the server, right? Back on the server and then onto the screen. So if I close this out, and I open this, and I hashtag this back in, this is using, the second part is using JavaScript. It's using the client-side callback. So let's see what happens. Let's run this. And now you'll see that, let's open this, open the callback. Now you'll see that to update the dropdown takes about 200 milliseconds. Maybe it'll take a little bit. Right, 200. It's slowly slowing down. It's slowly speeding up, 180. So it'll probably speed up to like 100 milliseconds. But then the title, which is this part down here, is immediate. It spends no time. The time is mine. And you see how this populates very, very quickly. This is client-side callback. This is really, really cool. So you see almost 0 milliseconds, so very, very quickly. It's probably taking like 5 milliseconds. But all this script, the input script, is activated on the browser, right? Let's see the code. So in the code here, we're saying take the drop-down value right here. This is a regular callback. Take the drop-down value, filter the data frame, build a histogram, and then store this histogram on the client-side DCC store. So store this histogram right here, right? I'm storing the data. So this is 169 seconds. This is the drop down right here that's storing the data on the client-side browser. So it still takes more than 100 milliseconds. It still takes a little bit of time. But the client side right here, the client side callback is actually taking the data, taking this histogram, and then it's taking the title of the input. This is the value of the input right here, right here. It's taking this data and it's building the graph. So I'm building a function. I have two inputs, so I need two arguments, and then I'm saying construct a figure, assign the plotly graph, the histogram. Is it a histogram? Yeah. Assign it to this object, to this figure, and then update the layout. Update the title text of the title according to the title text, according to the value of the input. This value input is this, which is this. So the text is updated according to text, right? And this is doing it all on the client side. So I'll show you again right here. Although the dropdown takes about 140 seconds, the input value here takes no seconds whatsoever. Right? It's very, very fast. And that's the advantage of a client-side callback. So if you have many, many callbacks and many, many components that update the graph, then just take most of the components and use them and update the figure inside the client-side callback, which will make your process a lot faster. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, please ask me under the video, YouTube video. I'll try to help. If you want to see more of me, or if you want to learn more about data visualization and Dash Plotly, click the link above to join my Patreon community. By doing so, you'll be supporting my work as a content creator and as an educator. Always remember, we're better together, so help each other out and keep practicing. Never give up. Bye-bye.